This is May 1st. We're in Lake Worth Beach, Florida, out for a drive in a 1969 Chevrolet Corvair 500 Sport Coupe in frost green, and we're headed south down Federal Highway. This car was my great aunt's that she bought new in 1969 from the Fairfield, Connecticut Chevrolet dealership. She traded in 1961 for this car because she heard that GM was going to stop making the Corvair, which they did in May of 1969. This is serial number 3375 of 6,000 that were built Corvairs at the Willow Run assembly line for the 1969 model run. The last 2/3 of the cars were built in what was called the Corvair room. They were taken off the assembly line because they were building so few of them, and the rest of the factory was consumed with producing Novas, which were selling well, and Chevrolet was pumping those out. So this having an air-cooled rear engine kind of threw things off when it came down the assembly line. So they moved all the assembly for the remaining Corvairs that they had allocated only 6,000 units to build. And the last 2/3 of them were hand-built, so this is one of those. This is a 500, it's a base model. It has 3 options. It has the 110 engine, the 110 horsepower engine. It's a flat 6 with 2 one-barrel carburetors, and it runs on premium fuel. Another option is the Power Glide transmission, which is on the dash here. It's a 2-speed automatic. You could also get a 3-speed with a shift on the floor and a 4-speed on the floor. And then it has an AM radio, and it works. This particular car my dad bought in 1974. It happened to be the last car my great aunt would buy and drive, and before she died, she sold it to my dad, and it had 18,000 miles on it. She had had a stroke while driving it. It made it back okay, but her driving was restricted after that to within 30 miles of her house. And so that kept the miles low. My dad collects Packards and has always had an interest in cars, and it was a unique car and one of the last Corvairs made, and of course it was his aunt's car, and so there was a family connection there. I ended up using it in the late 70s and early 80s for my high school and college get around car, go to jobs, go to school type of car, and was in a front end collision with it and messed up the right front part of the car. And at that point we had it repaired. It wasn't that bad, but it was enough to replace the front fender and the hood. And that's when it got its first and only repaint in the original frost green metallic. And then later on in the 80s, I moved to Florida and it sat in storage for a while. For a while being almost 35 years. Until I had owned some cars after I moved to Florida. And had sold those off, and I was sitting with an empty garage, and I said to myself, it'd be nice to get the Corvair down here and run around in that. And so we got it out of my dad's garage where he had his Packards. And mechanics spent about 2 months going through all the rubber parts and the brakes and making it safe for the road. And came down here with about 25,000 miles on the odometer, and now it has just a little over 28. So I've driven it over 3,000 miles during the time I've had it down here.